Disney World has been having some flooding problems this year, and that's not all that goes wrong in Disney World. Let's take a look. Hey everybody, it's AJ for Disney Food Blog. We can plan and plan and plan for a Disney World vacation, but sometimes we're hit with major roadblocks that don't have anything to do with managing crowds or getting reservations or finding that perfect spot in Frontierland for the Festival of Fantasy parade. Today, I'm not just going to be talking about those external circumstances that can throw a major wrench in your vacation plans, but also how Disney handles these crises and how you can ride out these storms too. Oh, and when I say storms, I mean that literally, because we're going to segue right on into point number 1. Flooding. So Disney World has been having some real issues with flooding this year. I'm sure you've seen the videos out and about. For example, over on our Instagram account, Disney Food Blog. And it's not uncommon to see water start pooling up in particular areas around the parks. And we're not talking little puddles. We're talking ankle-deep giant splashes, like cast members having to use giant squeegees to get rain out of the stores. So why does this happen? Well, Florida is right in the path for several storms coming in off the Atlantic. And some of those storms can get all the way up to Orlando if they're tropical storms or hurricanes. But regardless of those paths, we all know that Orlando gets rain just about every day in the summer. That is the tropical climate there. Well, we saw a good example not too terribly long ago at Disney's Hollywood Studios. The rain started getting heavier and heavier. One of the DFB reporters on site ducked into the darkroom gift shop located on Hollywood Boulevard, but one of the entrances to this store had been completely flooded over, so cast members had to act fast. Orange cones were immediately put up around the slippery path, and a few cast members formed a barrier around the flooded site to steer guests away from that area. In the meantime, another cast member started pushing water back out into the street with those giant squeegees. So teamwork makes the dream work. Doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be effective. Turns out Disney's Hollywood Studios is the park most prone to these flood-like situations, but flooding can happen at any of the 4 parks, especially on the outdoor pathways. Of course, there's only so much a cast member can do about preventing flooding outside, since despite off-the-wall claims, Disney World indeed does not sit inside a bubble dome where they alone can control the weather. Rumors are weird, y'all. So most cast members will do what they can to help improve the water flow, like unclog any trash that might have been caught in the drains that are keeping puddles from circulating through. And if storms and flooding continue into the evening, there's a good possibility that the nightly fireworks shows will be canceled, meaning cast members will have to break the bad news to guests. So here's what you can do if you're stuck in a flooded Disney World or preparing to go to Disney World when that's a potential situation you might come across. Preparing for flooding in Disney World is a lot like preparing for any kind of rainy day in Disney, so it's good to pack things like water-resistant shoes, quick dry shorts, extra pairs of socks, maybe even a poncho or umbrella if staying dry is a huge priority for you. You may also want to pack Ziploc baggies to keep important tech items that have the potential of being damaged by excessive rain or water safe. Waterproof cases also are a great investment and are fairly inexpensive. These are those little waterproof bags that you can put your phone in. They cost like $10 at a big box store. But we have had several situations where our reporters, or me included, get a little bit too much rainwater inside our phones, and they basically tell us they gotta dry out before we can charge them again. That's a thing that happens too. So do just that. Turn off your phone, let it dry out. Now, if your AccuWeather app is telling you a big storm is about to head your way, don't wait until the last possible second to find shelter. Disney's got plenty of indoor places for you to duck into, like shops, quick service restaurants, side exhibits, etc. Indoor rides with longer queue lines are also a good way to kill time, except for the fact that you'll be forced to exit the building at the end of your ride through, and if flooding is still happening on the outside, you might get stuck in it. So track down a shelter for Plan B before you hop in line. Usually a Disney ride is going to be pretty close to, if not completely attached to, a nearby gift shop, so sanctuary shouldn't be too terribly hard to track down, no matter where you are in the parks. So flooding may be an easier storm to navigate than others. Some storms can take a more serious turn, like hurricanes. Now it's time to talk a little bit about hurricanes. Do they hit Orlando very often? No. Do you still need to be a little bit concerned and have a plan for them? Yeah. Orlando's located on the East Coast, not too far away from the Atlantic Ocean, and they do indeed have a hurricane season. Every summer it goes from June to November. And despite Disney World being the most magical place on Earth, they are not immune to intensive storm patterns. So what does Disney do? Let's say the National Hurricane Center for the Orlando area has just issued a hurricane warning before your trip begins. If you call Disney World's vacation package's phone number, which is 407-939-7675, within 7 days of your scheduled arrival date, a cast member should be able to help cancel your resort reservation or reschedule your trip for a later day with no cancellation fees. And if your previous trip had discounts attached, a cast member should be able to help you track down new discounts to apply for your rescheduled vacation. But let's say you're already in Disney World when all the hurricane madness is underway. If a hurricane is tracking toward Orlando, there's a possibility that the parks will close early and cast members will need to help evacuate guests as quickly as possible. That's when the Ride Out crew comes to the rescue. When hired on, cast members have the option to volunteer for these types of emergency situations, meaning they can sign up to work and ride out the storm along with the guests. That also means Ride Out crew members are in it for the long haul. During the hurricane, cast members will be working super long hours and will have to stay on property for the entirety of the storm. But don't worry, Disney does make sure the Ride Out crew is well taken care of while they're on duty and hooks them up with meals and shelter on site. But once all guests are evacuated from the parks, what happens then? Well, Disney's going to ask you to shelter in place for obvious reasons. And although it's a major bummer to have to go home from the parks early when you were just starting off your best day ever, Disney tries to soften the blow by providing guests with some games in the lobbies. Sometimes a few of your favorite characters will happen to swing by in your Disney resort for a meet and greet. So what can you do if a hurricane's coming through and you're in Disney World? Well, just because you're traveling in the midst of hurricane season doesn't mean that hurricanes pop up often, but it's always best to be prepared. Disney World resorts are built to be pretty resilient against these bigger storms. In fact, some locals will even book stays at Disney World to ride out the worst of the hurricanes. The best hurricane-ready hotels in Disney World will be the ones where room entrances are on interior hallways. So you can get to the lobby, you can get to the gift shop, you can get to the restaurants, you can do the games, see the characters without having to go outside. So for instance, the tower rooms at Disney's Contemporary Resort are a good example of rooms that are not only accessible on the inside of the main building, but have multiple different shops and restaurants that'll stay open for guests' convenience and safety. Rooms that also have kitchen or kitchenette areas, like many of the Disney Vacation Club villas or family suites, will allow you to stock up on a few things and prepare quick meals while you shelter from the worst of the storms. Now, because we're currently in the middle of hurricane season, we've got a huge list compiled of lots of different hurricane tips to help you prepare for potential severe stormy situations. Just drop us your email at disneyfoodblog.com/hurricane-prep, and we'll send you a free PDF of all our best tips and tricks for riding out an Orlando hurricane in the middle of your Disney vacation. Now, again, let me reiterate, hurricanes do not make it to Orlando very often. In the past few years, Disney has only closed a handful of times because of potential hurricane activity. And Orlando is far enough inland that even if the hurricane does make it there, it doesn't usually cause extensive damage. But there have been some in the past that absolutely have. So please be sure you know the best tips to keep you and your family safe during hurricane season in Disney World. Another great tip, by the way, is to make sure you see and understand your travel insurance. If you are going to Disney World and it's close to hurricane season, buy that trip protection because you may need it. All right, let's take a break from this weather talk to discuss another disaster that could very quickly sour your trip. And that's getting sick, like super sick. All right, chills, aches, pains, temperatures, embarrassing unmentionables. These are all things that you so don't want to deal with when you're trying to take a vacation away from the stressors of life. But unfortunately, viruses and stomach bugs don't take a vacation, meaning you're still susceptible to them. And there are a lot of people in Disney World, and who knows if those people are sick, right? So here's what Disney does. Disney partners with Advent Health to provide their guests with virtual care straight to their phones. Welcome to the future. And you've got that My Disney Experience app downloaded, right? Then you also have access to Disney's virtual healthcare providers. If you're starting to feel under the weather while you're walking around Disney World property, but you don't want to track down an urgent care facility outside the Disney bubble, you can tap on the 3 horizontal lines on the bottom of the My Disney Experience app. Scroll down until you see an option that says Healthcare Services. From there, Disney's going to lead you to their Advent Health portal, which will help you set up a video doctor's visit for either adult or pediatric care. You can also get prescription delivery and even rentals for medical equipment and ECVs. And though being able to talk to a doc via video chat may seem super nifty, there may come a time when you're in need of bandages or over-the-counter painkillers or an ice pack ASAP. That's why the Disney parks also have first aid centers on site that you can go to for immediate assistance. But if you're dealing with a major medical emergency, immediately call 911 first. Always, no questions asked. So what can you do in this situation? Well, getting sick on vacation is a major bummer. I've had it happen to me, my kid, my husband. It just happens sometimes and it stinks. But one of the most important things you can do if you find yourself coming down with a bug at the parks is to stay in bed. I know it's a horrible answer, but it's the truth. Your first instinct may be to tough it out. Maybe the fever will break later in the day, or you'll get all the queasiness out of your system that morning, or your major headache and chills will disappear after you get some food in your system. It's one thing to see the glass half full, but it's another thing entirely to have delusions of grandeur. Plus, that's just unsafe, y'all. Don't convince yourself you'll be able to walk the ickies off once you're in the parks, because you could potentially be contagious and affecting other guests in the park as well. So be safe, keep others safe, and rest up in the room. If you're feeling 110% better later on in the day, you can always meet up with the rest of your group later. Because I'll be honest, a lot of times this is just dehydration or plain old exhaustion from a Disney World trip. If you plan on hiding out at your resort for the day, or at least in the morning so you can grab some extra Z's, but you're really needing some over-the-counter meds now, you can always check your hotel's gift shop for some basic painkillers. Will they be slightly overpriced? Absolutely. But they'll probably still get the job done. Now, those have been some pretty bad scenarios, but this one can be the biggest nightmare of them all. Few things are scarier than one of the younger members of your group breaking away from your line of vision in the middle of a crowded Disney park. I will never forget when my son, who was 3 years old, followed somebody else in the airport thinking it was me, and I lost track of him. Oh my goodness. And I'm sure every parent and big sister and big brother and caretaker here totally knows what I'm talking about. So let's cut to the chase. What can be done here to make sure everyone in your group stays safe? Well, cast members are trained to handle these situations with so much care and attention. When you tell a cast member that a little one in your group has wandered off, they'll immediately notify their supervisor and Disney security, and they may also ask for a recent picture of your kid, which is why it's a good idea to take a picture of your kids in their cute little Disney get-ups before heading out to the parks that day. The cast member will then report a child's description to the Central Communications Center, so all cast members can be on the lookout. Let's skip to the happily ever after part of the scenario, though, the reunion. When, not if, but when a cast member finds a kiddo who's somehow gotten separated from their group, whether they've been reported missing yet or not, the first thing they'll do is look around and see if they can find some frantic parents nearby. If nobody's looking concerned, then they'll lead the little one over to either the park's baby care center or guest relations. Baby care center for the little kids, guest relations for the bigger kids. During this time, cast members will make sure kids feel calm and safe during the situation. They will reassure the child that they're not lost, their parents are lost, and we'll find them. First, they'll ask the important stuff. Where did you last see your parents or guardians, and what do they look like so we can search for them together? Then they'll diffuse the tension of the situation with more fun and lighthearted questions, like asking kiddos who their favorite Disney characters are, or what their favorite ride in the park has been so far. All this to say, once your kid is with a cast member, they're in good hands. And parents, if you've lost somebody, then definitely let the cast members know, and they will immediately be working on the solution. Good news is, usually lost kids, or lost grown-ups as the case may be, are pretty close to each other, and it's pretty easy to reunite them. Now, what are some game plans to make sure this doesn't happen? Well, before your Disney World vacation kicks off, there are things you can do to prevent the scary scenarios from happening on your watch. First up, create a plan of action for your family, kiddos and adults alike. If someone gets separated from your travel party, come up with an easy-to-find location where everyone can reconvene. For instance, if your group's going to Disney's Animal Kingdom, tell everyone to meet up at the front of the big tree, aka the Tree of Life, if anything were to happen where you lose each other. Or if you're wandering around Disney Springs, tell the group to meet back up at Spitting Stitch above the World of Disney, or head over to Rainforest Cafe, which you can track down via the giant volcano jutting out from the rooftop of the restaurant. Any sort of icon that's big and towering and easy to find by all ages is a great northern star that can help reunite you with your group. I'm also a big fan of those temporary phone number tattoos that you can order from places like Amazon. With these, you can put your contact information on your child's wrist or somewhere else with easy visibility that they can show to a cast member. Now, when you first notice that your child's not attached to your hip as you're strolling down Main Street USA, your parental instincts might start screaming at you to immediately run off to track them down. But don't do this. Again, stay put, just in case your kid hasn't wandered too terribly far away, because most of the time they haven't. Now, if you have other adults in your group, send them out to do more searching outside where you are. Just make sure to always flag down a nearby cast member immediately, because a bigger search party means a quicker reunion and a huge sigh of relief when the nightmare is over and done with. Okay, this next one isn't nearly as bad as losing your child. We're going to talk about misplacing your phone or wallet. Losing an item is a lot less detrimental than losing a kid. However, losing items tends to happen much more frequently, thank goodness. One of our reporters actually had a situation where the reusable cup that she'd purchased that morning was stolen while she was watching a show in Disney's Hollywood Studios. Immediately, she went to guest services to report the poor missing cup just to see if it had somehow returned. Because our reporter purchased her cup via Magic Band, the guest services cast member was able to track down her receipt, and the reporter was able to get a replacement cup without having to pay for a whole new one, thanks to a team of understanding cast members. Now, this may not always be the case for missing or stolen items. Sometimes cast members will help you try to track down a lost item or check to see if someone's turned in something recently, but the moral of the story is that it's always good to reach out to guest services and see what they can do when it comes to those missing souvenirs you purchased the day of your visit. But what if you're missing something much more valuable? Again, guest services is usually where that sucker's going to end up, because that's where the most important items are going to be kept safe for you until you're able to track them down. If you get to guest services and they do have your missing valuable item, then A, thank goodness, and B, you're going to have to fill out a form stating that you've reclaimed your last item. Very basic stuff, easy to fill out, and worth it to have your item back. But if you don't go to guest services by the end of your park day to reclaim your missing possession, it will be sent to the guest services building in Disney Springs for the next day. That way, if you need to track down your missing item but you don't have a ticket to get back into the park, you'll be able to track it down at Disney Springs, which is totally free to get into. Now, when you find out something's missing and guest services hasn't received it, you can always report the missing item to chargerback.com. This is an online lost and found that Disney uses. When you do this, Disney will send you a confirmation email saying they've gotten your request and will be on the lookout for it. Within 48 hours, Disney should be able to update you on the status of your missing item. Sometimes, instead of delivering a lost item to guest services right away, missing items might also be delivered to nearby merchandise locations for a short period of time. So, say you were to misplace your bag somewhere outside Epcot's Mexico Pavilion while grabbing a margarita, a cast member may deliver that bag to the nearby Disney Traders gift shop instead, just in case you're still in the nearby area. Speaking of Epcot, guest services here can be a little trickier because there are two guest services locations, one at the front of the park and one at the International Gateway. So if you're not having any luck finding your item at the first location, you may have better luck at the second. But before you start in on this wild goose chase for whatever you've happened to misplace, always retrace your steps first and foremost to make sure your item's not still waiting for you right where you left it. Now, one other quick tip on this for those who have kids: when a Disney cast member finds a child's item like a lost shoe or a lost toy or, a sock, these things happen all the time. What they'll do is they'll pick it up and they'll put it on top of the nearest trash can. So if you're looking for a lost toy or sock that probably just dropped off, check the nearest trash cans, they may be on the top. Why do they put them up there? I think it's just for visibility. They're definitely not trying to throw your stuff away. All right, what other Disney World catastrophes can happen to make your vacation come to a screeching halt? Well, here's one that's always frustrating, but becomes extra frustrating when you're in an area you're not familiar with, that you're spending a lot of money to be in. We're talking about flat tires. What happens when you're down a wheel while driving around those Disney World roads? Well, this one's actually really, really cool, which is why I'm including it. Did you know Disney has their very own car care center on site just for their guests who happen to find themselves in a pickle like this? Disney's car care center isn't too terribly far away from Magic Kingdom, like just across from the Speedway gas station outside Magic Kingdom, and it offers roadside assistance for cars in need of a tow, extra fuel, maybe even a jump start, and of course for emergency tire changes. In the case that these mechanical issues aren't going to be such a quick fix, you may need to keep your vehicle at the car care center overnight, and if that's the case, you can rent out a temporary car there too, or, take Disney's complimentary transportation services everywhere instead, if you happen to be staying at a Disney hotel. Unfortunately, these services won't run cheap, and prices will vary depending on the severity of the situation, so just be prepared to dip into those souvenir funds if need be. Another downside of Disney's Car Care Center, it's not 24/7. On the weekdays, the Car Care Center will stay open between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., and on Saturdays until 4 p.m. On Sundays, it's open till 3. So if you're having major car troubles after these hours, Disney has noted that you should reach out to Resort Security for further support, or if that's not something easily attainable, you're going to have to find some towing numbers for highly rated services outside the Disney bubble. But just in case something were to happen out there on the open Disney roads while you're just minding your business, trying to enjoy your vacation, let me go ahead now and give you that contact information for Disney's Car Care Center. The phone number is 407-824-0976. But you can also book an appointment online through the Disney World Car Care Services webpage. All right, so what should you do if you get a flat? You've got a flat. While you're waiting outside for roadside assistance, what can you do? Depending on where you've broken down, see if you can possibly get your vehicle into a nearby parking lot or at least off to the side of the road. If you can't, flip your hazard lights on ASAP to let other drivers know to go around you. Hopefully, before you took off toward your Disney World vacation, you made sure to have a spare tire and basic tire changing tools like a car jack and a torque wrench all packed away, just in case anything like this were to happen. Because of course, we all do that, don't we? Right. But if you didn't, and Disney's car care services are closed for the day, there are other Orlando towing services open 24 hours a day that you can reach out to outside the Disney bubble. Just make sure to do your research and figure out what each of these services can do for you. Final note, though these topics are super important to keep in mind before you head out to Disney World, it's also important to not overly stress about the possibility of these things happening at any given time. Because there's a good possibility that none of this will happen, which would be ideal, but I find it always calms the anxiety to have a plan just in case. And what's important to take away here is that you can have some control over handling seemingly uncontrollable situations, but Disney won't abandon you to deal with them all by yourself. They've still got their trusty team of cast members in place, ready to help take on these challenges alongside you and keep you and your group safe too. After all, doesn't behoove them to have you have a horrible time, right? Right. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks for watching. If you've experienced these kinds of circumstances in Disney World and you have other tips and tricks and stories to share, please let us know in the comments. That's super, super helpful for all the other people who are watching this video and other people who are headed to Disney World. There is nothing better than personal stories and tips from you. As always, this is AJ for Disney Food Blog, and we'll see you real soon.